heard many things. I have heard different people try to justify colonization and the benefits that it brought to the African continent. But for the first time in my life, I had the most bizarre thing. And it came from a journalist. That is what shocks me the most. And I'm just like, what kind of self-righteousness is this? What history do they teach you in school? What did they tell you about colonization? That one way you've found a way to glorify it, and not even in a way that it should actually be glorified. I don't know. I want you to listen to this and tell me if you're not as surprised and unpleasantly surprised as I was at somebody of his caliber saying something like this.
Well, listen, there are bad things we did. There's good things we did. I mean, the intertribal slaughter we helped to ameliorate. We gave you democracy, even if Kenyans don't always live up to it as they should. We gave you the gifts of the English language. We gave you the rule of law. I mean, there's many institutional things. I've been to Kenya. I look around and I think, wow, if the British hadn't been here, this place would not be quite as good as it is. Not that the Kenyans have quite lived up to the legacy they were left.
Hello there, how are you doing? Welcome to another episode of our conversations. My name is Ondiro Oganga. I'm a business journalist by profession and a digital content creator. I love coming on here, having conversations with you guys about Black people, Africans, our empowerment, and how we can rise up and take our rightful place at the global stage. It's another beautiful day to talk about colonization from a colored person's point of view. Now, this is by no means to demonize a whole community. This is a video that is meant to hold accountable one person and actually two people. Two people who are in this video and every other person that thinks like them. So, King Charles, formerly Prince Charles, was in Kenya for a state visit, the first since his coronation. His mother, Queen Elizabeth, had been to Kenya before. And Kenya and Britain have a very complicated history because Britain colonized Kenya. And colonization came with a very painful history, right? Grab a history book, educate yourself. It's out there. It's out there. It's out there. Honestly, like, we don't need to be repeating these things. We don't need to be reliving our trauma for white people entertainment. Like, it's not worth it anymore. And because it's out there and some of you refuse to read it and understand it, then it even defeats the essence of regurgitating it, because literally you don't want to hear it. You don't want to know about it. You're just interested in who you are and what you know. The presenter begins by saying that Kenyans are hoping for an apology and by extension, reparations. Why are we hoping for reparations? Because of colonization. Why? Because you forced us into labor, you stole our resources, and you used some of that resource to develop your country. And we're saying, now that we know better, we want to hold you accountable and responsible. So asking for an apology is not a lot. Honestly, asking for an apology is not a lot. And an apology doesn't go just once. You just didn't steal our pencil, right? And these videos are always hard for me to do because I'm just like, how can somebody be so daft? Honestly, when we were growing up, we used to think people in the UK and America are so brilliant because of how movies portray them. But I'm just like, how can you be so daft? This is just 80 years ago. Kenya got independence in 1964. 80 years ago, there are people who are still alive that lived through the legacy of colonization. So yes, an apology is due over and over and over again. It will never make up for your atrocities, but it will show that you're remorseful. And that remorse and guilt, by the way, we are not even going to sugarcoat it. We need you to feel guilty for what happened so that you don't convince yourself that there's room for it to happen again. When it comes to reparations, you owe it to the people, because there's no way that somebody works for you for free and then you think that you'll get away with that. How? In what world? In what world? Even you in your own home country in England, you don't work for free. You get paid for work. So what is so hard about Kenyans saying, for all the hard work we did for you, we want our money? What's so hard about that? What's so hard about saying, pay us what you owe us? Not just for the work that we did, but also for the torture that our people had to endure. What's so hard about that? That is punishment. That your people that's a concept from your people. Because when our people refused to work in the plantations, do you know what happened? They were beaten. Punishment, consequences. So it's okay for dark-skinned colored people to have consequences, but because you're a few shades lighter, you should not have consequences? Or what are you telling me here? What privilege allows you not to have consequences? And they go on to say that, Britain has helped Kenya a lot. Yeah. How? Most of these things are loans that come back to you. Most of these things, they are part of corporate social responsibility. One thing that we've learned about the West is that they don't do anything out of the goodness of their heart. So whatever money they give you, trust me, they've made 10 times more out of you, whether you see it, know it, or you don't.
I wish the king had more pride in Britain. But it seems that every time King Charles visits the West Indies or Africa, he's got to crawl, he's got to grovel, he's got to apologise for Britain's wicked colonial past and pretend it was 100% evil. And it's the whole same story again on his visit this week to Kenya, where activists are hoping that after sorry comes reparations, free money.
The wrongdoings of the past are a cause of the greatest sorrow and the deepest regret. There were abhorrent and unjustifiable acts of violence committed against Kenyans as they waged, as you said at the United Nations, a painful struggle for independence and sovereignty. And for that, there can be no excuse.
Joining me from London every Wednesday is Patrick Christie, star presenter on GB News, which also, by the way, now has the fastest growing news site in Britain. It's on its way. Patrick, the King's slamming of British history in Kenya, the right thing to do, or is he letting Britain down a bit?
Well, it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. The King is supposed to be our envoy around the world, not going around on an international apology tour. And they're trying to spin it as the King stopped short of full frontal apology. Well, that's just a technicality. That was an apology. And we've seen it time and time again from the royal family. There was a lady whose real name is Marlene Headley, who went by the name of Ngozi Fulani and then dressed in full African clobber and attended an event at Buckingham Palace. She took a great umbrage as a member of the royal household, Lady Susan Hussey, who'd been the Queen's closest confidant for decades, asking her where she was really from, which might have been slightly clumsy, but also not the most ridiculous question, given the circumstances. They then apologised to her, but a little bit like this, Andrew, an apology is not enough. Next comes the handout. Next comes money. But, for the Kenyans, we have actually given them billions of pounds over the years. They are a member of the Commonwealth. In fact, £132 million investment in Kenya went there just a couple of years ago. And can I just say, whenever we see incidents take place in this country, if we see a terror attack or something like that, we don't ever expect an entire community to apologise for the actions of one rogue individual. So why should our entire country now, and every British person living in it, and our current serving monarch, apologise for things that had nothing to do with him? Where are our reparations from the Norman conquerors or from the Viking and their ancestors,
That is not the bizarre part of the interview. The interview just keeps getting worse. Like, when it's a train wreck and it just keeps crashing, that's what happened. This good gentleman goes on to say colonization. He actually downplays the impact of colonization. He says, there were some bad things that happened, but there's some good things that happened. One of them, English. As if we were not communicating before the white man came. Yeah? As if we didn't have language. As if we did not hear each other. As if we could not understand each other. Be grateful for English, he says, the language that I currently speak. He goes on to say, be grateful for infrastructure and connectivity. A minute. If you go to the map of Africa and check the connection lines that colonialists build, you know what? They lead to the port. It's not connectivity. They lead to the port because that way they could ship out the kidnapped and stolen slaves to go sell them and for them to work in plantations, or they could ship out the stolen resources or the resources that they made from the forced labor. Run it back. How is that connectivity? Most of our railways lead to nowhere. Literally nowhere. That's why connecting Africa until this day is very hard, because we could just refurbish, if you really connected the continent, we could just refurbish the old lines. But no, most of those railways, they lead to nowhere. They start where the resources were and they end at the ocean where the resources can leave the continent. So what are you talking about? Generally, what are you talking about? It says, we gave you democracy. We've been through this. The Guinea's leader said, Western democracy that Africans are not consulted on is not democracy. So let's quit playing it. That doesn't even work. And you know, it's almost like they're disappointed that we did not carry on the legacy of colonization. I'm not taking this video seriously because it's funny to me. It's really funny to me how your oppressor can be unimpressed that you broke free from the oppression and you're not doing everything within your power to enable further oppression and continue with the cycle of oppression. These people are sick. These are people who, given an opportunity, they would colonize Africa all over again.
You know, couldn't he say, well, listen, there are bad things we did. There's good things we did. I mean, the intertribal slaughter, we helped to ameliorate. We gave you democracy, even if Kenyans don't always live up to it as they should. We gave you the gifts of the English language. We gave you the rule of law. I mean, there's many institutional things. I've been to Kenya. I look around and I think, wow, if the British hadn't been here, this place would not be quite as good as it is. Not that the Kenyans have quite lived up to the legacy they were left.
Yeah, exactly. But also, if it hadn't have been us, it would have been someone else. I mean, the French were at it, the Portuguese were at it, the Spanish were at it, everyone was at it, OK? So if it wasn't the Brits that had gone in there at that particular moment in time, it would have been somebody else. And I don't see these other countries queuing up to apologise either. But it just ties into something else that's really going on in this country as well, which is, you know what kids are going to be taught in school today, don't you? That our king has gone abroad to Kenya and apologise for our past, which gives teachers another excuse to teach youngsters in this country now that Britain's past is terrible and that we were an evil force around the world. I mean, I've always said this, and I always will, that the world has been very lucky to have Britain, actually, and at times it has been a gift to the world. Yes, there were historic wrongs. Yes, there have been things that have gone wrong because things were different. Times were different back then. And that's not to excuse them, but we shouldn't be apologising for those things now.
No, no, and no. Patrick, I'm just wondering who's running British Foreign...
Well, these videos drain me. They really drain me. But if I don't talk about it, who will? Somebody has to call out this nonsense, because that's exactly what it is. It's I've never seen anything like this before. And you know, not a man of his age. Literally not a man of his age. Like, he should know better. Like, he's a little bit old. Like, you've lived long enough. Grab a history book. It's not that hard. Google. It's not that hard. Like, it really isn't that hard. And that reparations, you will pay. If not today or tomorrow, the year after, because history is not going anywhere. Fight it as you want, but eventually you will pay. Thank you so much for watching this video. Just let me know, what was your reaction to these sound bites, because I still cannot believe my ears. I still cannot believe my ears that that's what I heard. Thank you for watching. Comment down below what you think. Like this video, share it with a friend. I'll see you again next time.